all seem to get along so well. When you're practicing and spending so many hours together, I figure you spend a lot of time together working and trying to interpret the music and come to an agreement as to what it means together. Is it always harmony? Who can honestly answer this question? We want honesty.
I think we can all answer. We can all answer.
Come on,
honestly.
Phil.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, so gentlemanly. Is it always like this?
Just
Larry?
like that. Oh, it's just like all, all marriages. There's no problems in it, right? So.
But it's got to be. I mean, this is 4 people trying to bring together a common interpretation, or not. Am I wrong? I don't.
The main thing is, I think, happens at the start of the career, meaning that if you're fortunate, lucky enough really, that the chemistry, that the personalities happen to work together. I mean, you can have 4 fantastic players, but it does not mean that you can figure out agreement on musical ideas. I think what's worked for us is we've all wanted to make the music sound come alive. That's the most important thing. And there's many ways to do that. There's no end in interpretation. We've been fortunate that we have been successful, that we can have multiple performances of many works. So therefore, we can try it different ways all the time.
Sure.
And that's an important thing, is not to hold on to some idea as the only idea. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you're just not in a good mood.
Right.
But you try. The key is that you have to learn how to rehearse, how to be able to give criticism, how to be able to take criticism.
Well, is part of the, I know in journalism, putting together a good piece, you duke it out sometimes. I mean, you take it seriously, everybody does, and part of the process is sort of airing out everybody's concerns, feelings, and that final, that final piece of work is the product of everyone's blood to an extent. I mean, are there moments where you all duke it out a bit over the music, or does it come so easily, just naturally?
No, it doesn't come. I mean, some things come easily or easier from having played together. This is our 30th anniversary season. So,
wow,
I mean,
30 years.
There are some things that we had to discuss and decide on in the first 10 years, or even in the first 29 years that maybe, we don't have. You've played a particular piece a number of times. Certain things will happen. You don't have to talk about every note, but I think what has helped with this group is the fact that we don't just have our rendition of Beethoven's Opus 59 Number 3, and it's always exactly the same. We're always tinkering with it and always changing it and trying to make it better. And we also play a lot of different repertoire. Some groups will do just a couple of programs for the year, and it's very easy to do that, but I think after a while you sort of start going on automatic. So I think some technical things become more automatic, but I think we're constantly striving to make it better artistically, and that keeps us going. And it does result sometimes in some rather heated discussions or even arguments. But as Larry said, we have a lot of opportunity to perform. We're very fortunate with that. And instead of sitting there trying to decide what is absolutely the best way to do something, we know we've got a few performances of this piece coming up, and we'll try it different ways, and then make a decision about it.
How do you try? I mean, when you work together, isn't it difficult to sort of I guess almost ad lib when you are in performance, or or do you discuss it before? I want to try something different. I'm going to go in this direction. Or yes, Gene?
Yeah, well, there are specific parameters that you can discuss. There's the tempo. You can play through certain parts with the metronome. And even though ultimately when you interpret the music, you don't want to play it metronomically, you want to breathe sometimes between phrases or stretch here and there. When you work on it with the metronome, it might be instructive to find out how much you've diverged more than you thought from a steady beat. And it's a discipline. So that's one tool that you can use. There are other issues about dynamics. How loud, how soft should something be? How gradually do you pace a crescendo when it's marked? What should the general character be? Now, and that's getting more into a question of adjectives. Larry might say sometimes it sounds so sad when And he's not talking about music that's supposed to sound
He says
sad.
that a lot, actually.
Yeah,
he
he
says it
does.
a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of makes you, it makes you feel lousy when he says it.
It's also the stylistic aspect too.
I
You
guess
have to, yeah. I mean, you have to look at those parameters too, because there's certain the kind of dynamic range that Beethoven gets to, which is, you know, what Beethoven does is kind of transform the medium of string quartets. I mean, if you look at the three pillars of string quartets, you say it starts with Joseph Haydn, who invented the medium. Beethoven took it from him and brought it to the 20th century. I mean, just created a whole soundscape that's extraordinary. And it took really to Bartók before you changed that sound. Bela Bartók came in and developed new sounds and really found a new language. But you know, for us, it's endless. It really is endless. I mean, it's kind of, you know, if you're a painter, I mean, you have tools and you keep trying to hone the tools. When we teach, I talk about that with the students. I mean, it's very easy with four stringed instruments, like string instruments. The string quartet represents perfect four-part Western harmony. It can blend very easily, and everybody thinks that's a great accomplishment. But in fact, that's not that hard, because the string instruments, they can blend together pretty well. The hard part is being able to bring out all the interesting lines, all the little solo lines, because the composers don't write just one voice all the time playing the melody and then the other guys are playing. It becomes much more complex than that. Things are passed around. It's like a play. It's like a conversation.
A story?
It's a story, and you hear these four characters discussing.
You know, the endless part of it that Larry just mentioned is precisely the part of it that's so wonderful. Yeah. Because this music, the music that we're privileged to play, is so deep and so complex in so many ways that you can spend more than a lifetime working on it, reworking on it. And this is the thing that gives us that common goal. You know, we're not the creators of this music. Somebody asked me last night at a concert whether I was adding my own notes. I said, no, you know, it's all written down for us. We're much more like judges who interpret a law that is written, you know, many years ago, or construction people who put up a building that has already been designed by an architect. We're not really the architects, we're the interpreters. We're the people who realize what somebody intended. In doing that, yes, we can have discussions about whether we thought the composer would have liked it this way or that way, or whether the audience should be hearing it this way or that way. But all of that arguing or discussion that we have is all at the service of the music and the service of the composer, and delivering something to the audience which is alive, which has spontaneity, which is something like you imagined the composer would have wanted.
And that must feel good when you all four feel like you've told that story, you've gotten it right.
Which sometimes rarely happens, that we all four come off stage after a concert and agree that that was a great performance. Because, you know, there is no one single way to interpret a piece of music. You can have a person sitting in seat 36 out there who loved it, and the person sitting in seat 37 could have hated it. Exactly the same performance, because of the perspective on the music from which they happen to come.
So, try this one. Are there moments, I mean, has there been a concert where you all just knew you got it right, that you all felt completely in sync, and that the story, if I may, was told? I mean, are there times where you walk off stage and you look at each other and you just know that was it? That's what this is about?
That's funny. I don't know. I think there's so many tangibles. There's so many different.
I would think it would be hard almost.
It's almost impossible. I think the one gauge for us is the audience reaction. I think that we feel, if the audience really enjoys it and they are excited by it, and people that really love music and know music that are fans, or, you know, because we've been playing all over the world for 30 years, and you know, we've developed these amazing relationships with people all over the place, and when they come back and they say, that was whatever, you know, that was the best Beethoven I've heard you guys do, and they've heard us probably, you know, 50 times or 100 times. I think that's good.
So the massive standing ovation does not hurt.
We like those two.
Those are always good.
Right.
Any performer likes that.
Yeah.
But you know, there's another kind of interesting thing too, that there are times where in which you feel really easy technically, like, you know, you feel it like your hands are going where you want them to go, and the violin is responding in a good way, the acoustic is nice, and you feel a little bit like you're riding the crest of a wave, and it's a wonderful feeling. Sometimes, however, I've talked to people in the audience about this, sometimes those particular performances don't come across as much in an emotional way to the audience as one in which I feel like I'm struggling, you know, like I've got to really, you know, push through this, you know, because we're human beings, and sometimes things work physically, technically, easily, and sometimes they don't. And strangely enough, or ironically, however you want to look at it, sometimes the concerts where we're actually struggling more, that comes across to the audience as something more human, more emotional. So it's always this tricky thing of trying to find, you know, trying to ride the crest of the wave and reaching perfection, which of course none of us ever does. Mozart did and Bach did, but the rest of us human beings didn't and never will. You strive for that, but at the same time, if you get close to it, sometimes you lose the striving a little bit, and then it's not as interesting for the audience. It's very sort of esoteric way of looking at it, but it's interesting too, because in other words, you can never be sure as a performer exactly what is coming across.
And maybe that edge or that lack of being perfectly sure is what keeps you going.
Exactly.
It keeps you on your toes and nervous, which you want even after 30 years, I would think.
I'd like to be a little more sure than I am most of the time, but if I was sure all the time, it would be boring.
Wouldn't we all?
Yeah,
Wouldn't
right.
we all? We're in the middle of one of your concerts here at Concordia College for the Concordia Conservatory, and just one final question for each of you. Before you got on stage for this concert, what do you do to prepare? Do you meditate? I mean, there must be sort of a place where you have to go
Were you
in
going to
your
say
mind.
meditate or medicate? What were you going to say?
Both, actually. But that's, you know, we'll
No,
get to that
no.
later.
Neither.
Neither.
Actually.
You
No.
just get right to work.
I think individually will often warm up. I mean, each of us has different kinds of technical ways of just getting the hands moving and the blood flowing, and we'll often work on difficult passages, especially close to the beginning of the concert, when you're going to be more nervous than later. But we don't do anything. I mean, we always rehearse before the concert together, but then when we're actually backstage right before the concert, we're sort of doing our own thing.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. The gentlemen of the Emerson String Quartet, thank you very much for some unique insight into your work and your years together. 8 Grammys, 30 years together. It's quite amazing. So we're going to go back to the show now. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mika Brzezinski for Concordia Conservatory at Concordia College. Now back to the concert.